بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأزكى الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين صلاة دائمة إلى يوم الدين. أهلا وسهلا بالإخوة الكرام. Welcome our brothers and sisters in this fourth session of our program and series of Community Matters. Community Matters is a monthly program where we discuss and address the most important issues that affect the life of our Muslim community in the United States, such as financial issues, political issues, raising children, schools, society in large. And we started our program with a session about Islamic state planning, and also we had a session about elections. Last session was about atheism, and today we have our special guest speaker, Ustad Ahmed Rehab, to talk about, inshallah Rabbil Alameen, about the civil rights of the Muslim community in the United States. The importance of this subject is well known, because we know how important to us are the civil rights. Actually, many of us who migrated from overseas were seeking for these rights, and we have to work to protect them. Some people would say that these rights now are in danger, and they are now worried about losing these rights, or that these rights could be affected. So what are the civil rights of the citizens and residents in the United States in large, and the civil rights of the Muslim community in the United States, how to benefit from them, and how to protect ourselves through them, and also how to protect these rights and prevent anyone from taking them from us. We have our guest speaker, Ustad Ahmed Rehab, the Executive Director of CARE Chicago, and he is also the Director of CARE National Strategic Communications, and CARE, as you know, is the nation's largest Muslim civil liberties and advocacy group. With 2 decades in leadership and institution building, Mr. Rehab is regarded as a national leading expert in U.S. civil rights, media relations, and Islam in the West relations. He has given hundreds of public lectures and presentations at university campuses and public stages coast to coast and around the world. Ustad Rehab has been interviewed thousands of times on various local, national, and global TV and cable news programs, as well as national and international print media. His OPEDs have been published in numerous newspapers around the country. Ustad Rehab served as a board member of the Illinois Coalition of Immigrant and Refugee Rights, ICIRR, as vice president of Refugee One, a co-founder and bridge initiative at Georgetown University, a board member and secretary of the Egyptian American Society, a member of Chicago Council and on Global Affairs, CCGA, Muslim Task Force, and on the Eisenhower Fellow of American Assembly. He is also the founding president of Amrex Consulting and Amrex Media, a trustee of Al-Azhar Islamic Foundation, and adjunct professor at the American Islamic College. So welcome, Ustad Ahmed. We are so happy and so proud to have you with us today. Allow me just to start by talking about the uh, human rights in Islam. Throughout the history of humanity, there was a long trip of human rights from civilization to another, until we reached to the modern era, which is considered by many people as the top of the human rights. While when we look in the Islamic system, we can find a system of human rights could even could beat the system of human rights made by the modern civilization. Through teaching the subject of human rights in Islam during teaching the course of political system course, I found that the Islamic system includes a system of human rights based on four foundations: human dignity, mercy, justice, and equality. The most important human rights set by Islamic law, like the natural rights, the right to have a faith, religion, and freedom of worship, the right to live or right to life, right to freedom, to exercise your freedoms, right to security, to dignity and preservation of honor, the right of movement and immigration, the right to justice and equality. And also, according to the civil rights, the right of ownership, the right to education, the right to work, and a decent life. The political rights, like the right to political participation, and social rights, the right to get married and form a family, the right to social security, and the right to health insurance, and many other rights studied by the scholars and writers in this field, the human rights in Islam. These human rights could sometimes match with the modern human rights, international and national in many countries, but we think that the problem is in applying these rights more than determining them. So what is the situation of the civil rights in this country, and are they in danger? This is our main session with our brother, Ustad Ahmed Rehab. The microphone is yours.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you for hosting me and for running this very cool program that you have. I love the seating and the arrangement, mashallah. I'm sure it looks great on screen. These conversations are very important for the community because we're here, we pray, we do dhikr, we engage in our spiritual purification, but the masjid, as you teach and you well know, has always been a space of reflection on the realities of the time and how we can apply our knowledge of faith and worldly affairs in order to protect ourselves, to increase our opportunities, ensure our prosperity and peace. And so this is very important. So thank you for that. And thank you for taking time to be with us here tonight. Tamam. And thank you also to those who are watching online. But we have a video that you want to show. Let's start with that, and we'll get right into it, inshallah.
If you can, Omar, just put the video on the screen. It's a very short video. Take it back to the beginning. This video is made by Human Rights Watch, and as a non-profit organization, the Orland Park does not adopt any political side, but this video is talking about the human rights in the United States. Soti Omar. Omar, from the beginning, and make sure that the sound is working. ويا ريت على المين سكرين كمان تكون مبينة.
As we wait,
Yeah, you can go.
I'll begin to
Yeah,
just
yeah, you can
generally,
continue until it is ready. Yeah.
tell us when it's ready, inshallah. But just to kind of emphasize the point you made, in our faith, the very fact of creation is sufficient to afford creation dignity. بمعنى كرم الله وجه الإنسان أو الله سبحانه وتعالى لقد كرمنا بني آدم. It's not the Muslims, it's not the pious, it's not the religious. It's by the fact of that God created this human being. The touch of God in this creation is sufficient to afford that human being a certain set of rights. Now, whether this person is a bad person, there are laws. If it's something about belief, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Lord of hearts. But at no point do these rights ever become null and void. They're always there. The right to be respected, the right to be protected, the right to peace, the right to justice, the right to opportunity for prosperity, not the right for prosperity because, the opportunity, and then you do with it what you may. So this is true whether someone is Muslim or atheist, whether someone is straight or not, whether someone behaves in a way we like or doesn't behave in a way we like. And that is what Islam has brought to the world as one of the high standards of human rights. Because almost everywhere else, particularly back then, people were looked at and treated differently if they were deemed to be different. In color, we don't have that in Islam. In ethnicity, in economic capability, in their access to power and influence. So it's important to begin with acknowledging, and if it's not clear, it should be clear, that our faith is very strong, Islam is very strong on human rights. As such, we need to teach our kids what this means. We need to teach ourselves and remember this legacy of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the greatest legacy of human rights. And we need to push out into the world, starting with where we live, to ensure that these standards are fought for because these are our values. We believe in human rights. Amen? Now, civil rights is a subset of human rights. Now you're talking about a government, you're talking about a nation that has borders, that has citizenship, that has a government, that has laws, that has a constitution. And in the United States, this Constitution and its amendments, the Bill of Rights, they enshrine and protect the civil liberties of all Americans. And the very first and most important is the freedom of conscience, the freedom of speech, the freedom of belief, the freedom of assembly, the freedom to be different from power. And that is the greatest and most important aspect of what makes America unique. And it is the most threatened part of America today. This very foundational value is more threatened today than ever before. Just yesterday, Harvard, the greatest university in the United States, has adopted one organization's definition of anti-Semitism, which is a very politicized definition, to include certain criticism of the state of Israel, of the foreign state of Israel. So that Americans who have lived with the pride and virtue of this freedom suddenly now have to shirk their freedoms for the benefit of the sensibilities of a foreign government. And so they say that if you accuse the state of Israel at its core, in its nature, of being evil or of being murderous or of being whatever it is that you say, that is equivalent to anti-Semitism, and so the university will deal with it like they do with all other forms of hate. Now, this is a huge problem because when we criticize something like the state of Israel, We're criticizing its actions. And we're criticizing, if you will, also the foundational ideology behind these actions. And this includes, in my opinion, which will never change, that this ideology is a political, supremacist, racist, violent ideology. This is not my position because I'm an anti-Semite. This is my position because I'm an intelligent human being who knows history, okay? And the facts are there. Now, you can like it or not like it. This is a free country, or so we thought. Or so we thought. We used to say that. Kids would joke, hey, it's a free country. But is it anymore? That's what we're facing. And so, yesterday I was giving a lecture at Loyola University, and it was to the faculty, to the staff of the university. And it was about Islamophobia. And I told them, you have to understand, it's not your job to figure out who's right in a conflict between students. It's your job to ensure that all students have their rights protected to believe per their conscience and to express per that freedom. For both sides, it's pretty fair. If Armenians and Turks start arguing about the Armenian genocide, as a father, as a citizen, as a taxpayer, I don't want the university to determine who's right and wrong. That's not their job. Let this group believe what it wants and make its argument and make its, put out its evidence, and let the other group counter with its own arguments and evidence. Let there be a healthy debate, as all proper free civilizations should have, and let people make up their mind, the neutrals. As long as, obviously, you have to have some parameters, there is no violence, and there is no actual hate speech per our existing constitution on the basis of race, religion, sex, etc., right? Likewise with the conflict in Palestine. But what we're seeing today, we're seeing the ideological pressure coming from ideologues in government who are aligned with ideologues in a foreign government to say that if you don't agree with us, it should be illegal. If you don't assume what we tell you to be true, you are engaging in hatred. We have many such cases now. You see, as here in Chicago, we've always had cases of civil rights violations, of discrimination. Examples are someone is wearing a hijab and she's treated differently. Maybe there's even a violent crime. Maybe somebody tries to pull off the hijab. These are very clear-cut civil rights violations, acts of hatred, right? Somebody's trying to pray in their breaks at work, and the employer sees that they're praying, they don't like the fact that they're a Muslim, and they try to limit their right to freedom of religion and say you can't pray during your break, or they'll fire them or retaliate against them. Or if they try to take a day off for Eid, everybody takes a day off for Christmas, which is, quote unquote, a Christian holiday. And so this country doesn't have an official religion. So if a Muslim takes Eid, that should be absolutely given by their employer, and they might retaliate, right? Those types of cases. You might have cases of bullying, of vandalism against the masjid. We've seen this here in this very masjid, unfortunately, against a Muslim home, against tombstones in a graveyard. These are the type of clear-cut, discriminatory and hateful, or hate crimes type of stuff that that we deal with. But now, in addition to all of this, there's this whole new world of dealing with censorship and the limitation of the freedoms of Muslims and Americans. So in various schools now, we see this new group I've never heard of before, because it was just created last year, called as an example, the Chicago Jewish Alliance. This group is just 5 guys, and they started to organize and target our schools, our children, and our educators Wherever they feel there is a Palestinian narrative or voice, they try to limit, demonize, otherize, and silence these voices. For example, in Glenbrook North, there was a young girl, 15 years old, who wrote a line in her yearbook that they didn't like. I don't even remember what the line is because, frankly, I don't even care. 15-year-old girl in a school yearbook. And suddenly, there are school board hearings, one after another. There's a media circus. The media's coming to me, knocking on my door, microphone. What do you think? I'm like, stop. What are you talking about? Are you kidding? There are tens of thousands of civilians being killed as we speak. And you're not here to ask me about that? You're not here to ask me about my community who's losing hundreds of family members in Gaza? But you want me to talk to you about a 15-year-old girl's quote that offended some Zionist group? I'm not playing in this game. I have nothing to tell you, but shame on you. But that's the gaslighting that they're trying to do. This is the distraction that they want to create. And I always teach in communications. I want everybody to know this and teach your kids. Remember this. The right answer in the wrong frame is the wrong answer. The right answer in the wrong frame is the wrong answer. Meaning, if I were to say anything in this wrong frame, whatever I say is wrong. Because the frame is wrong. Do you understand? So I have to shut down the frame, recreate the right frame, which we should be talking about. If you want to talk about this conflict, then talk about what matters, what is real. We're still making movies about the Holocaust. Great. It was a horrible event. It was 80 years ago. It happened to people's grandparents, some of whom they've never met. This is happening to people we know today. It's happening now as we speak. It isn't a historical event, it's an ongoing live event on your television sets. And we can't talk about it now. We're supposed to talk about what offends a new Zionist group, a 15-year-old girl. There's another situation, another school. You have a hijabi Palestinian teacher. She's an award-winning PhD, one of the best in her field. But they're coming after her because she's a chairwoman of her department. And there is a course that she teaches, and there is a section on genocide studies. And basically, there is a book called Night, which is a very popular book written by Elie Wiesel, who is the guy who coined the term Holocaust. And this track teaches about the Holocaust, which is great. And people, it's great that they teach about that. People should know about the horrors of the Holocaust. But they hired her to make sure that the 80% minorities in the school, Mexican, Black, Indian, Asian, feel heard and that the curriculum represents their realities too. So pursuant to the point of her being hired to decolonize the curriculum, she did not remove, but she added other forms of genocide and other books, and students can choose which track they want, and they write an essay, and they're graded on this. If all of them choose Night and the Holocaust, no problem. She's not pushing anybody. But she added Rwanda and Bosnia and Gaza. And that was enough for them to come after her in a public campaign. That was enough for them to put her picture, her name on social media, and to start knocking on the doors of the schools. And these schools become intimidated and scared. Anti-Semitism. And then they say she's tied to terrorism. That's what they always say, right? How is she tied to terrorism? She gave charity to a group that somebody said is tied to the Muslim Brotherhood, which somebody said is a terrorist group, whatever grapevine, right? And these words are buzzwords, and they're created as such. And the school, it's not an intelligence agency. It's not a government entity. It hears these words, and it kind of, clamps up. And there's a reaction, especially if there's thousands of emails, hundreds of emails. There's pressure. And they're lying about the fact that she removed Holocaust studies. So we're involved in all of these cases, by the way. I want to let you know that, to push back. The last example is Stevenson High School, one of the biggest, probably the highest rank in Illinois, maybe one of the highest ranked in the United States. Stevenson High School in Buffalo Grove, Vernon Hills area. There was a World Fair, there's a Palestine booth and an Israel booth, okay, great. In the Palestine booth, they had an image of historical Palestine, the map. And it was in this pattern of a watermelon, you know, red with black dots and green around it. The watermelon, as you might know, is a symbol of Palestinian resistance against erasure. So the Israeli booth, of course, always wanting to shut down, you know, anybody else's expression that they don't agree with when it comes to these issues, starts to complain. An adult goes to the booth and harasses the minors that were there. The school does the right thing. They push the guy out and they put security on the booth, and now there's a scene. But then the same organization that did what they did in the other schools now comes after this school. Thousands of emails are sent. We're offended, we're hurt. This is a call to genocide. This is a call to throwing Jews into the sea, etc. And so we wrote a letter also to the school board and to the principal and explained, number one, it's not your job to agree with this side or that side. It's your job to ensure both have freedom and security to express their positions. You see, I don't like what the Zionist side says or preaches, but I have the civility to make this point for both sides. They don't. That's the difference. Now, having said that, I'll take a stage with a Zionist any day of the week, and I've done that many times, and I'll debate the issues, and I'll bring the facts, and I think I'll win the debate because I think I have, you know, what is right on my side. But now it's in the form of a debate. It's not in the form of me instituting a law to shut it down, like they're trying to do with us. So on that point, that's point number one. Point number two, if you wanted to talk about the issue, let me remind you that if some Palestinian or Muslim puts up a map or any message, they get to decide what it means. We're tired of having someone else tell us what we mean. Did any of the students say, we want to throw Jews into the sea? No, I thought so. Did any say, we want a genocide against Israelis or Jews? No, exactly. What did they say? I'll tell you what they say. From the river to the sea. What does that mean? Palestine will be free. What does that mean? Free from what? In the three different territories, three different things. In the West Bank, freedom from settler violence and IDF-backed violence. The theft of land, the occupation. In Gaza, the siege, the genocide, and in the state of Israel proper, being a second, third, fourth, fifth-rate citizen for the 20% Arab Israelis that live there. They want freedom from this system of oppression and apartheid against Palestinian people, Muslim and Christian, that has materialized in different ways in different areas. That's from the river to the sea, for all of it. There needs to be freedom from this very widespread oppression and repression. It isn't a genocide against Israelis, it isn't throwing them in the sea. The genocide is what's actually happening, not hypothetically against the Gazans. Again, gaslighting. So it's important that our own children know how to articulate their points and know their rights. The most important right you got to teach your children is the right to insist on self-representation. But with that, there needs to be education in our community in how to use your words and how to own your words. I've been in the business 20 years, alhamdulillah. I've been attacked left and right, alhamdulillah. But at no point have I ever had to apologize or say I didn't mean what I said. Because I've always meant what I said. Every word is chosen and put in its place that represents a genuine belief that I will defend to the death. So you don't have to waste your time coming back. Anger has no place for a Muslim. Emotionalism has no place for a Muslim. Reactionary behavior has no place for a Muslim. Revenge and vengeful language has no place for a Muslim. That is not my teaching. That is the teaching of your Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. القوي الحق الذي يملك نفسه عند الغضب. not the one who can pin someone to the ground. The real strong person in our religion is a person who can control themselves in a moment of anger, in a moment of rage. So, but why? Why do we control ourselves? Because we know that God is in control anyway. Nothing happens without the permission of God, so why should I be angry? The anger is against injustice, but this anger has to be put in a positive energy to do something about it, not to complain and whine and react. So if we're in control and we teach our children this, and they own their language and they own their character and mood, then they never, ever compromise on their right to their own voice. That combination is critical. Usually we lack both. We're not articulating our positions right in the right way, and we're going overboard, and then somebody catches something that you shouldn't have said. That becomes the story. Or we don't know our rights, and we're afraid, and we don't speak up, and we're not present in spaces we need to be present in. So as we raise our kids, this is very important, Sheikh Haitham. It's not enough for us to make our businesses successful and to send our kids to medical school and even maybe law school or dentistry, whatever. That's great. But building a strong citizen and a strong Muslim in this society is necessary for our survival. For our survival, not our success. Is that clear? Now, today we have a situation where there's a new administration, right? And this administration, as this video would have shown, is coming with some pretty scary ideas. And they already started to implement some of these ideas.
I canceled the video because they had
Oh, they canceled the video?
sound issues. I don't know if they fixed it or not. If it is fixed, they can put it in. Omar, if it is fixed, put it on the screen. If not, no problem.
So I started with a genocide in Gaza, and I started with the attacks on the schools, and I started with our right to self-representation, and we should have lack of fear in insisting on having our voices determine what we say and what we mean, because what we are seeing now from this administration is part two, in my opinion, of what we saw in the genocide. So with the genocide, you saw this physical shock and awe, scorched earth approach where tens of thousands of civilians were murdered. And the justification or excuse for that is very simple for them. It's a few buzzwords. Hamas is one word. Simple as just say that word and kill as many civilians as you want. Anybody says that, Hamas, code word, right? Or anti-Semitism, it's another one, or Holocaust, or something like that. And it justifies whatever this country does to how many people. And it's not just the murder of innocent civilians, it's the destruction of infrastructure and schools and the hatred, very important, behind all of that. Because we know the statements. We've seen the public statements from these officials and from their media and from their societal leaders about how there is this hatred and contempt for the very humanity of these people. My opinion, if you want to talk about anti-Semitism, this is it, because these people are Semites and they're almost hated for their native culture to the region by a lot of people who are from Poland and Russia just a generation ago, or Lithuania or Belarus. Very ironic, but we'll leave that for another conversation. But now what we're seeing is a new government coming in, a new administration coming in, and while all of us, and this is a non-political conversation in the sense I'm not saying, it's a non-partisan conversation. I'm a 501c3. I'm not here to promote one party or versus another. But anybody in power is in power, and we have to deal with their, bad ideas and good ideas. And that's what we do. So with Biden, we were all very incensed by the support for this genocide with our tax dollars, our diplomatic cover, our media cover. And so there was a reaction to that. And now you have this other administration, and while there has been a ceasefire, which is good, that's what we've been asking for, there are two kinds of genocides. There's genocide with mass bombs and shock and awe and scorched earth, which we saw. And then there's genocide with 1,000 cuts. You know what I'm talking about? 1,000 cuts. Little cuts, big cuts, they add up. And that's really what we've seen in times of peace. There's never really a time of peace for Palestinians, because when there isn't this genocide from the skies, there is the siege that kills them slowly, there is the land grabs by the illegal settlers that pushes them out, and it's this almost war of attrition, harb istinzaf, basically they're pushing them out little by little. It is ethnic cleansing, it is a genocide. And so now we're in this sort of softer, cuter, peaceful part of it, but it's still very much there. Now you hear things like push them into Egypt, push them into Jordan, clean out Gaza, right? But in addition to that, there's pressure here, and this brings us now to, more back to our civil rights issues here, to punish and intimidate those who are standing with these people. And so they start with the students. They can't do much for an American citizen, so they say, okay, let's go for the low-hanging fruit, for the vulnerable. If someone is here in a non-citizen capacity, on a visa, student visa, whatever visa, we're going to deport them back if they're found to be promoting anti-Semitism or supporting Hamas. Now, nobody that I know, and I've been to many, many protests, nobody that I've seen has made a protest to support Hamas. And no one's done a protest to promote anti-Semitism. We hate Jews, so let's protest to tell the world how much we hate Jews. Well, absolutely. Exactly. It's Muslims, it's Christians, it's Jews, and Jews are prominent in these very protests. And it's silly, and it's insulting, and it's offensive, and it's stupid, and it's counterintuitive, and it's against our own history. Before this whole mess, Muslims historically welcomed and protected Jews in their midst, actually. When Europeans, who were truly anti-Semitic, were pushing them into pogroms and shtetls and the ghettos and those types of places with occasional expulsion and occasional mass murder and whatever it is, Inquisition, etc. It was the Muslims that welcomed them, first in Spain and then in Ottoman Empire, in Egypt and the Levant. Some of the greatest rabbis of the Middle Ages were from Muslim countries, and they were known by their Muslim names, their Arabic names, like Ibn Maymun, one of the greatest rabbis in their tradition. So there isn't this inherent hatred for these people, the way that they're trying to suggest when they say that we're anti-Semitic. Not historically, not in a contemporary way. There is, however, rightful disdain for the actions of what they call the Jewish state, and the fact that they call it that it's not going to excuse it from our criticism. And that's what these protests are about. So they're gaslighting again, and what they're really trying to do is to shut down any exposure of the horrors that this little country is doing in the region and really in the world, because they're taking our tax dollars to do this, and we're very far away. And they're influencing here through propaganda the American people, through media and through this and through that, through these lies about, that this is anti-Semitic and this is promoting Hamas or whatever it is. Very simply, when we stand up, we're standing up for the children, for the women, for the men, for the families, for the injustices. That's what makes me come out into the street. It's not because I support group X or Y, which, by the way, didn't exist until 1989. And this whole mess has been around since 1947. So the whole thing is silly, but that's what they're doing. The second thing they're trying to do is and this is where the problem is, because now Congress, you see in America, we have the system of checks and balances. It's not like in the Arab world where Saddam Hussein or Hosni Mubarak, if he wants something, or even Vladimir Putin, or even Premier Xi in China, those types of countries where if the premier, if the president, if the sultan, if the king in Saudi Arabia wants something, they just demand it, and the courts play along, and the parliament, which is usually decor, plays along. And we've prided ourselves in America that we have a system of checks and balances. They teach this in school. What does this mean? You have 3, separation of government. You have the executive branch, the presidency, and the cabinet, wuzara. You have the judiciary, اللي هي المجالس القانونية, and then you have the legislative, البرلمان. And each of those has different powers, and they push against one another, so no one has absolute power.
But I believe now maybe Trump has all of three of these powers now.
That's a strong statement to make, but he is trying, as more than I've ever seen in American history, to weaken this separation of powers and to weaken the system of checks and balances, him and his supporters.
So the question here, do you think that the executive order against the students who were protesting against the genocide in Gaza, do you think that this is now affecting students? Are they did they start the deportation of any students? And if the system will allow this, is this also against the Constitution of the United States or not?
So this is what you have courts for, because it's not that simple. I mean, they make a claim, we make a claim, we sue, we go to court, and the judge decides
Did CARE
right.
receive any
No, not yet.
complaints?
Not yet. I mean, this is very recent, but they've already started also the ICE raids on Latinos and others as part of the campaign promise to deport illegal immigrants, the undocumented. And they say they're going to start with the criminals, but if anybody opens a door or is at a factory and they're asked about their standing here in the United States and they're found to be here illegally, more likely than not, they'll be taken. Doesn't matter if they have a criminal history or not. I mean, I have friends years ago who opened the door by mistake and they didn't have their papers in order and they were taken. So, going back to the point though, this separation of powers and the checks and balances is meant to protect from strong leaders that want to come and make their opinions the law. If I say you're anti-Semitic, then you're anti-Semitic. And if I say that is a crime, then it's a crime. Well, first of all, who gets to determine? Who gets to determine what that even means? Or what, or who is that? Is it just going to be one person sitting at a desk in a government office in the White House? And then they just, call the authorities and they pick you up and they take you in a truck? Just like the Assad regime, Zawar al-Layl, Abdel Nasser, those types of, presidents. I mean, that's what it's sounding like. So we're pushing back because we are a civil rights organization. We represent the law. So we're pushing back to say, wait a second, there's so many problems with this. And again, it doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree, whether you're pro-Palestine or pro-Israel, that's not what we're talking about. The system, the process, has so many problems that can easily be abused to create a system of a fascist system of tyranny. Going to your point about he's trying to take over the other, parts of government. Well, at the moment, Congress, which is divided into the House and the Senate, both are majority Republicans, his party. So laws that he wants to pass should be easier for him to pass. Some laws require a supermajority, which will be harder, but for the simple majority type of things, or maybe even for some of the supermajority, they might pass. But the problem is, it's not just Trump, and it's not just the Republicans, quite frankly. There is a problem in America in general, including in the Democratic Party as well, when it comes to Palestine, when it comes to Muslims, when it comes to Arabs. And so when you saw, for example, this, what we call the Kill Non-for-Profit bill, it came through Congress. And in the House, it was bipartisan. And this bill states that if an organization similar to the students, the protesters, is deemed to be promoting anti-Semitism or has, to be clear, has a connection to terrorism, then we should remove its tax-exempt status. Now, they're not saying they're going to shut it down, because what does a connection mean? Right? Legally, it's going to be strange to criminalize an organization. But they're saying, well, you know what? The tax exemption is a privilege, and we're going to withhold that privilege. The organization can still continue, but now it has to depend on the good folks who donate and not get a tax exemption. Now, strong communities will say, we don't care, we're going to keep, supporting. We don't need the tax exemption. Our exemption is with Allah. But what they're trying to do is trying to kill the organization by removing the donors. Because they can't do it in a legal way. They can't shut it down in a legal way because these organizations are doing nothing wrong. I want to add this, whether it's the schools that I told you about, whether it's the students, whether it's the undocumented with ICE, whether it is this law that is trying to pass through Congress against our organizations, we're fighting as CARE and our allies in all of these spaces. And we're fighting by saying these things are unconstitutional. You see, here's the thing. Even though he's trying to weaken the systems of checks and balances and to permeate all aspects of government, there is still, that's why I disagreed with you when you said he owns all three or can own all three. There is still plenty of spaces, plenty of judges, many people who are elected who will push back based on the law. For example, recently, he signed another executive order. These are easy to do. Just get a piece of paper, sign it, right? Executive order. That all federal loans and grants should be immediately frozen. Well, a federal judge said, no, you can't do that. So that executive order means nothing. And that back with the Muslim ban, if you remember, 2017, his first time. The Muslim ban is when he tried to say through executive order, these countries, we don't want these Muslims. He didn't say that, but we don't want people from these countries coming in. And so we sued and we pushed, and others did as well, and the judge said, you can't say that. So he amended the executive order to try to make it more legal. And the judge says, you can't say that. He amended it again, he meaning his administration. And that's also an executive order that will be pushed back against in government, in court, and likely will not stand. So the point is, at the end of the Muslim ban, he then passed a very kind of watered-down version, but still problematic enough. But it's all for political show. This is what I want you to understand. Even this whole ICE raid is for political show. Here's why. Every president has deported migrants. But he tries to do it with the cameras and with a sense of, there's an enemy and I'm saving you from the enemy. That's what the right wing does. The right wing needs, when it was Bush, remember Bush? Terrorism, 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 terrorism. If you remember that, every day. 19 guys did some horrible thing, and then there's this group of like ragtags somewhere in Afghanistan and Yemen or whatever else, and that's going to be now the new Soviet Union. All Americans are like, buying duct tape and toilet paper and, filling, food, because they were scared into believing that we're about to enter into World War III because terrorism. They need that enemy. They need to build it up. The right wing needs that to scare the population into place. It's not that it didn't happen. It's not that there aren't acts of terrorism. It's not that we shouldn't defend ourselves and protect our society against it. But the sensationalization and the politicization to that level is to control what they think are sheep. And oftentimes they succeed in doing that. Likewise now with illegal immigrants. They've always been around. How did they even enter did you ever ask yourself how they entered in the first place? 20 million, 13 million? They wanted them in. They needed them in the fields of California and Arizona. They're cheap. They have no rights. They're silent. They live in the shadows. If something happens, they can't really complain because they have no rights. It's almost like a forced slave labor. So in one hand, it's kind of wink, wink. We don't see it, but we need it. And the other hand, when it becomes politically valuable, suddenly it's, I'll save you from these horrible other brown people. You got terrorists, now you got the immigrants, Latinos, so on and so forth. And they always, if you listen, they're talking always about gangs and criminals and rapists. Now those exist. Again, it's always حق يراد به باطل. You know that? حق يراد به باطل. في إرهابيين مسلمين وفي مجرمين من كل حتة وفي Latinos or whatever or blacks جايين من جنوب من South America rapists فعلا وقتالين قتلة وكذا. But these are always a small percent of the larger population of people who are coming as families for a better life that you allow them to come in because you want their cheap labor. And then, instead of really arresting and really dealing with the criminals, you're making it out to seem like this whole population is a threat to the entire United States. الشماعة بنقول بالمصري الشماعة اللي بيعلقوا عليها. Translate that, I don't know.
And before, we still have a few minutes, but inshallah Rabbil Alameen, after the prayer, we will continue the session to receive your questions. If you have any questions, you can, inshallah Rabbil Alameen, ask after the prayer, inshallah, of the Isha prayer. But anyway, in the remaining minutes, many of the Muslim community members are immigrants. Some of them came for a long time and they have the citizenship or the green card. Others are still on visas or are applying for the green card, which it is a process could take years sometimes. So, how or what is the best way to deal now? Because there is a kind of aggressive attack on against the immigrants. So, how to deal with this issue within our community, Muslim community here, and the other thing that when should anyone contact CARE if he felt that he was abused or he was attacked because of his identity as a Muslim?
You contact CARE for any of the reasons that we've spoken about. If your kids are facing an issue in school, you contact CARE. If you are approached by immigration, you contact CARE. If you're approached by the FBI, you contact CARE. If you have a problem with law enforcement in general, you contact CARE. Or at your employer, you contact CARE. CareChicago.org. Our number is there. We have forms you can fill out. An attorney will always call you back. If you're traveling into O'Hare, you or your family, and you're worried about what might happen in terms of secondary questioning or whatever, you can contact our very particular special project at CARE called tapus.org. TAP, Travelers Assistance Project, TAPUS.org. And there's a hotline there as well. But carechicago.org, Sheikh Al-Fadil can provide you with all these links, particularly carechicago.org/protecting your rights. That is the, let me tell you the URL, my list, Sheikh. It's protecting your rights. In this link, you will find what to do if ICE contacts you.
You want to put it on the screen, the website?
If you can put it up, it'd be great. He's putting it up right now. هتلاقي جزء موجود
on the large screen, please, Ya Omar. Come on.
If the FBI contacts you, هتلاقي جزء about Gaza protests or student protests in general, and it will give you all the information that you need. It includes things like, for example, just give you an example, because we don't want to spend too much time reading the website here, so we just spoke about general issues for you. But it will give you details like you do not have to talk to the FBI if they try to contact you. You have no obligation to talk to them, even if you're not a citizen. That's by law. Never meet with them or answer any questions without an attorney present. Refusing to answer questions cannot be held against you. It does not imply that you have something to hide. You do not have to permit them to enter your home or office. The agents must possess a search warrant. We tell you what that looks like in order to enter your house. If they say they have it, demand to see it. Again, we show you what it looks like and what it doesn't look like. Never lie or provide false information. Request to answer the questions with an attorney present. We'll provide you with a free attorney representation. So these types of steps and details, what happens if an ICE agent comes into your workplace or at your home or on the street? ICE meaning immigration, customs enforcement. So basically, that detail is there on this very important link. You should read it. You should educate yourself with its details. You should share it. And then if you have a problem, you should contact us. And we can also do a particular know your rights. Bring the attorneys. I'm not an attorney, by the way. I myself am not an attorney. So for the legal advice, we need to have an attorney present.
Maybe sometimes just you don't have to answer or to let them in, or you have just to ask for an attorney. You not to answer any question without the presence of an attorney, so you will be protected. This is maybe very important thing to know our rights. Thank you very much, Ustad Ahmed Rehab. Jazakumullah khair, for this useful and illustration about the civil rights. Inshallah Rabbil Alameen, after the Isha prayer, we will continue our session to receive your questions, and inshallah we will be answering